It is 6 o'clock. I will call the August 9th, 2022 meeting of the Wythe County Board of Supervisors to order. Tonight we have Pastor Jim Tunnell from the Baker's Chapel Pentecostal Holiness Church to provide an invocation. If you would please stand and remain standing for the pledge.
It's actually Tennell. As long as you don't call me Toenail, we'll be okay. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we are aware of the incredible task placed upon the Board of Supervisors this evening. The task of making decisions that affect not only themselves, but everyone in our blessed county. So, Father, I pray a prayer of blessing upon them. Guide them with wisdom, lead them in decision-making, and most of all, let your face shine upon them. And now let us pray the prayer that Christ taught his disciples to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we ask you to forgive others. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda, citizens' time. As always, I'll call you up and you have 3 minutes. First person we have signed up is Mr. Jerry Blevins.
First of all, I would like to thank the ladies of Kansas on their stance on the Roe versus Wade civil rights issue. Since my last speech to the Wythe County Board of Supervisors, a lot has been going on with my cyber neighbors. Electronic items such as dash cam on my Toyota RAV4, smartphones and television were messed with, along with inside lining removed from my dog bed. Holes were burned into the vinyl siding on my machinery shed. I took pictures of the holes for future reference. Nissan pickup truck had cargo light turned on, and my medical dictionary had pages torn and crumpled up, which is something that has been done several times in the past. The most interesting incident, however, was the recovery of my Secret Service memo, which was placed in my pocketbook mere seconds before the police kidnapped me from my Suzuki vehicle and took my pocketbook, and upon my release from custody was the only item missing from my pocketbook. The item turned up in the middle of last week in my Suzuki console. This is the first time I have had physical evidence that the police were involved in harassment and terrorist acts of the approximate last 20 years. This is Secret Service memo. During my last speech to the Wythe County Board of Supervisors, I spoke about the missing Secret Service text of January 6, 2022, and whether or not they would turn up or the legislative branch of our government would open an investigation into the missing text. As of the date of the speech, I have not heard anything pro or con about the missing text, but maybe we will know more at the next Board of Supervisors meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. That's all we have signed up for citizens' time, so I'll close citizens' time. Next item on the agenda is the payment of invoices. Each member has received a copy of the invoices in your board package. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Cook. Is there any invoice any board member wants to pull out and or discuss? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote with Mr. Cook.
Aye.
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 So approved. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of our previous meeting from July the 26th, 2022. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Cook. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Horning. Is there any corrections or addition to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 So approved. Moving on to old business, we have some appointment vacancies. Mr. Baird, do you have anything to
I think there's a
add on
couple
those?
board members that have some people for the Recreation Commission.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate, or recommend for nomination and nominate Mr. Wayne Kirby for the Fort Chiswell Recreation Commission.
All right, have a motion to appoint Mr. Wayne Kirby to the Recreation Commission for the Fort Chiswell District. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Terry. Is there any questions or discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Kirby. Do we have any others?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh.
I'd like to nominate Haley Govan Moorhead with the West Whitfield District for the rec.
All right, we have a nomination for Miss Haley Moorhead for the West Whitfield District position. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Terry. Is there any questions or discussion on that one? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations and thank you, Miss Moorhead. Any more?
Not at this time.
And do we have any for the Whitfield Community College
Do not.
or Mount
Still trying.
Rogers Planning District?
We do not.
All right, moving on to new business. We have the spotted lantern quarantine. We have Miss McIntyre with us for a presentation. Miss McIntyre?
Thank you very much for asking me to come and speak. I think David was invited. My boss, he was out of town for a little while trying to work out the quarantine with other states. So that's why I'm here tonight. I do have an example of spotted lanternfly in real life, so you guys can take a peek at that in brochures that I'll be referring to in the talk. And I have a PowerPoint, hopefully, that will show up. There it is. So I'm Tina McIntyre. My job at Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services is Pest Survey Coordinator, so that's puts me square in the middle of invasive species, which is what spotted lanternfly is. I'm gonna need to figure out how to advance and see this. Well, it's not projecting out correctly. Okay. So before I get started, just want to talk, before I get started talking about the quarantine, wanted to share life stages information. And
Not
here
gonna
again.
Yes, you just run it from there. While we had this delay, the new monitors have been delivered. We have 3 new monitors going here that are much larger, and hopefully they'll be installed very soon to help us.
Well, I can talk about the life stages. So right now, we're in the adult life stage, and it is a hitchhiker, and it will jump on and off all kinds of things. That's the picture of the spotted adult that's in the top left corner there. And it has piercing, sucking mouth parts. It will jab that mouth part into a tree and suck sap out. And that's how come it's very damaging to plants, because it just robs them of all their nutrients. In September, the adults will start laying eggs, and that's an egg mass in the top right corner. It looks like somebody threw a little piece of spackle on the wall, and they're about the size of a quarter, maybe. The eggs will hatch in the spring, and those blue and white things will come out. Again, piercing, sucking mouth parts. They tend to feed on the tender stuff, so they're either in the tops of trees or on vines that are very tender. And then sometime in June, July, they'll turn into that red and white spotted life stage there at that end. And then the cycle starts again, and we're back to adults in July. So with spotted lanternfly, we do have some threats that come along with it. It is a beautiful, charismatic insect. If you've ever seen one in real life, they're very fun to watch because they just are clumsy and they kind of fly around and hop around. They they have this group defensive mechanism where they're all moving at the same time. So they are charismatic and easy to become attached to until they get in really high numbers and the adults are flying and hopping off you. They also secrete a bunch of, they suck up more sap than they can utilize, and they secrete honeydew out, and it just drips on anything that's underneath them. So not a very pleasant environment when there's really heavy populations. They are an exotic pest, so no natural enemies here. That's how come their numbers can explode. Even if you find one or two one year, they can be hundreds to thousands the next year because of how fast they can reproduce and how fast they can hitchhike. They prefer tree of heaven, which is a wonderful thing. Another reason why we might want to like them, it's another invasive plant that's taken over a lot of our native areas, and it will end up killing tree of heaven eventually after 3 years of heavy feeding. The problem is it'll jump off tree of heaven to about 100 different other host plants, and some of those host plants are commercially valuable to Virginia, like apples, peaches, and they definitely prefer grapes. So the wine industry is really getting nervous about spotted lanternfly being in the state. The feeding can decrease grape harvest by 75 to 90%, and that is, in some cases, that's with controls being exerted and the plants being sprayed. And again, back to the homeowner nuisance, the honeydew and city mold issues that come along with high populations. I think there are more. Yes, and small trees can die with heavy feeding. If they're little whips, they can't make it through all the sap that's removed. Larger trees, forested trees, can lose the tips of their trees, like you might see cicada injury. If you're in a high cicada population, you see flagging at the top. So that's the threat, that's what we're worried about. So where are we now? That's maybe, can you click on that? I hate to make it go off screen again. Oops. So this is in Pennsylvania, where there's a lot of spotted lanternfly, and you can just see how they can move around, and if that was your orchard or your backyard, how disconcerting that could be if you had a bunch of them coming at you at one time. In America, spotted lanternfly is adapting to this environment, and each time we think we know the impacts it'll have, it'll find another industry that we didn't think about. So emerging threats are always happening. And then it's clear that VDACS and USDA and other state agencies just can't handle this on their own, and we do need help from everybody, and that's where the quarantine comes into play. I think the next slide, this is a slide taken in Winchester where the populations are really high, and I don't know whether you can see those little silver dots. It looks like rain falling. It might be too bright in here for them to show up, but it's just hundreds and hundreds of droplets that the spotted lanternfly are dropping on the people that would be standing there. So it's a very uncomfortable situation when you're in high populations. That's too bright, I think, for that to show up. So where is spotted lanternfly currently in Virginia? This map shows our current populations. The yellow-orangish color is the high populations generally infested. Anywhere you go in those locations, you're apt to find spotted lanternfly. The green counties, including Wythe, are the ones where there's isolated small populations. And in Wythe County, the only population that we have found or detected so far is at the 77 exit off of 81 in, what is the name of that? Fort Chiswell, thank you, that's it. Just stopped there today just to check it out. So they have a lot of tree ahead in there, so it's not a surprise, it's a truck stop. Lots of people coming from the generally infested area down here, so I could see how that could easily be infested. Can you go back for a minute? You might think that the way that the county map looks, that it's 81 that's causing the problem, and you could be right in some situations like Fort Chiswell. That is definitely the case there, and even in Carroll County, it's the same way. But all of those other counties, a lot of it has to do with the impact of trains and railroads, and we can't get access to treat on railroads. So we haven't. Until we do, I think we're gonna continue to see rapid spread. Okay, now I'm through, thank you. So this is a map of the, where spotted lanternfly is found in the country. There's 12 states that have spotted lanternfly now, and they are indicated with that blue color. So you can see that it's mostly centered around Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania received some stone from China, and that's where we think the initial infestation occurred. Virginia, Winchester received some of that stone, and that's where we think we got the infestation from. The red outline indicates the quarantines that are currently in place at this time. And then if you can see those little purple dots, those are places where there have been spotted lanternfly found, but no reproducing population. So we did install a quarantine in 2019, and we added to it in 2020, and now we're adding to it again in 2022. These are the states that currently have quarantines. And the New York and California have external quarantines, which means they can stop our produce or our regulatory items from entering the state if they are not inspected and spotted lanternfly isn't removed from them. The other states also have external quarantines, as do we. We try to enforce that, but you can imagine it's very difficult to do trace backs on anything that we find, and especially when it's railroads that aren't cooperating with us. So those are the 22 localities that are currently in our quarantine that we just added on July 8th. And then we even have an international aspect to this. Canada has an external quarantine, and if we ship anything to Canada, we have to certify that it is spotted lanternfly free. This is a map of those 22 areas that are currently quarantined. The aim of our quarantine and all of our efforts really isn't to eradicate spotted lanternfly. At this point, that cat's out of the bag. What we're really trying to do is to slow down the spread enough so researchers can catch up and figure out a management strategy that will work, that's environmentally friendly and maybe cost effective too. So what does a quarantine mean for businesses? Here in Virginia, what it means is that regulated items cannot move out of the regulated area unless they've been inspected for spotted lanternfly and the spotted lanternfly has been removed. And that inspection has been documented in some way. What are the regulated items? On slide, I know it's ridiculous, right? That's the exact wording in our law. And I'm not going to read it to you, but basically it's spotted lanternfly life stages. It's plant parts, live or dead. So logs and firewood, things like that, nursery stock. Outdoor recreational vehicles, outdoor construction materials, any packing material that's stored outside like pallets, outdoor household items like picnic tables or grills or things like that, and then any conveyance, so any car, any vehicle, trailer, boat, RV, anything that's parked outside that's going to get moved out should be inspected. So basically that's it. Anything that's outside could become a regulated article. So we do have a permitting system. Pennsylvania started this, and we decided that it was because USDA decided they were not going to have a national quarantine, that every state was going to have to manage their own quarantine. We decided to do what Pennsylvania was doing so that we would have some cohesiveness and between states, so that if we have a permit, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey would honor that permit. And if they have a permit, then we would honor their permits so that we could keep business flowing. The permit can be obtained through VDACS. There's a lot of people, a lot of businesses in Virginia that actually have Pennsylvania permits because that is where the permitting started, and they were doing business pop up in the first or second search result. It costs $6. It takes about 1 or 2 hours to complete. And it may take, just a warning, people always get a little frustrated. It may take a few hours to a day to get the password once you set up your login account. So people want to sit down and do it, and sometimes there's a delay, so they get frustrated. And it's also on the back end, once they finish, it takes a minute for Virginia Tech to send back the email that says you passed, here's your credential. So this is an example of one of our permits that we issue. And then what are the responsibilities of a permit holder? Well, first off, they need to, after they've taken the class, this is a train-the-trainer class, so they assemble the staff that they think will be most associated or working with the regulated items, and they train them on what spotted lanternfly looks like. They maintain records of who was trained, what date, and who trained them. And then they provide that permit, a copy of that permit, to those trained individuals so that they can have it available if they're asked, whether that sits in a truck that's leaving the regulated area or is attached to a commodity in some way that might be inside a truck. And then they have to follow the best management practices for businesses, which on the back of the inspection statement that hopefully each one of you got, that's the best management practices that we would like businesses to follow. Okay, so once you've been trained by the person that took the class, you have responsibilities too. So you need to conduct the inspections, and then you need to possess a copy of that permit that goes along with the commodity or the vehicle. And then you have to ensure that life stages are destroyed that you find. And then you have to follow any other conditions of the permit that might be relevant to your business. You have an example of this inspection statement in this stack of paper. It is entirely just something that we gave businesses to start out with because everybody was asking us for something, but it really can be anything. Our inspection statements can be a CDL log, if it's a vehicle, if it's a truck driver and they already have an electronic CDL checklist they do every morning, they can just add a line in there for check for spotted lanternfly. It can be a laminated placard that sits on the pallet stack that the date can change and the inspector's name can change, and all they do is wipe it off and put it on there. We don't require that these inspection statements be held. We just require that if you're leaving the regulated area and we stop you, that you can show us one. That's current. So the best management practices that I mentioned that are also a part of the permit, they include killing any life stage a spotted lanternfly when they find it. So that's the first and foremost, so that it doesn't have any chance of leaving. And then conduct a risk assessment of the property. Where could spotted lanternfly be getting in or on the product or in or on the vehicles? Don't park under trees, shrubs, or tree lines so that the spotted lanternfly can't jump on your vehicle and drive away with you. Don't store any commodities in the tree line for the same reason. And I think there's one more, no? Yeah. And keep the doors and windows of your vehicle closed so they can't get inside your either your back of your truck or in your car. Another one of the management recommendations is to manage tree of heaven. It is their favorite host plant. When they're fourth instars, that red and white one, and adults, they tend to move back to tree of heaven. Scientists think that they're feeding on it to absorb the chemical that tree of heaven has in it, and it makes them unpalatable to birds. So our native birds can't figure out how to eat them because it tastes bad, and they think the chemical derived from feeding on tree of heaven provide that bad taste. So what we'd like for people to do is remove 90% of the tree of heaven on their property and keep 10%, and treat that 10% with a systemic insecticide so that when the remaining spotted lanternfly all gang up on that one tree, they get a dose of insecticide and die. We do ask that if you are removing tree of heaven that you use a herbicide when you do it, because it will stump and root sprout like no tomorrow. So using herbicide is the only way to really get rid of tree heaven completely. The controls that are available for spotted lanternfly are many. It's kind of a wimpy insect. From May through November, you can actually physically, if the populations are low, just kill them, swat them, stomp them, scrape them into a little bit of Clorox or alcohol or hand sanitizer, and that'll just do it for them. For the egg masses, you can scrape like that picture, just scrape the egg mass into a container of alcohol or hand sanitizer. If you just scrape them on the ground, a good many of them will still hatch. So our staff actually gets a lot of joy out of this. They all have really thick knives, and they'll rub the knife down the egg mass, and if it's real quiet, you can hear each egg pop, and they get a lot of satisfaction out of doing it that way. It's kind of cool to me, but hey, if they're happy and they're killing, I'm okay. Let's see. There is a management guide in the packet that has all of the alternatives for killing spotted lanternfly in there. So I won't dwell on that too much. As a part of the USDA environmental assessment, we are allowed to use bifedrin, which is Telstar, if you're familiar with that. As a contact treatment, we can use Dinotefuron, which is a systemic insecticide on the trunks of trees, and USDA can also treat with herbicides. So we do have several things that we can do, which we're trying our best. So I'm sort of coming back to where we started. If we all work together, we may be able to manage spotted lanternfly and hopefully avoid a situation like this, which is kind of what Winchester looks like everywhere else in the state. And if we can just stomp it or spray it or make sure we kill it and not move it around, I think we all have a chance of living in a better environment if we could just slow it down enough. So then I think that's it for me. These are two biological controls that have been found in the field. The one with the fuzzy white stuff is a fungus that was found in Pennsylvania on a lot of spotted lanternfly. There were actually 3 different funguses that were found there, and they're trying to see if that could be a commercially viable spray option. And then on the praying mantis, it's a wonderful rag. You think, oh, that's great, praying mantises eat them. That's a Chinese praying mantis. It's an Asian invader, and it's displaced our native praying mantises. So I'm glad it's here to eat spotted lanternfly, but I kind of wish we had our own praying mantis back. So any questions? If you want to flip it one more time, I can take questions. And there's a bunch of resources and websites that are available.
Do you mind if we save that PowerPoint and then share that around to the board members so we have those resources?
Yes, she has it, definitely.
Just a couple of questions on your inspection. So if I'm a small business company that's a landscaping company, if I'm taking plants to Blaine County to plant or whatever, I have to have a permit.
You should. Yeah.
If I'm a large company that stores pallets outside for shipping of goods on, I need to be inspecting those pallets and I need to have a permit. So it's everything in between.
Yeah, so it kind of gets a little tricky because there's a lot of businesses in Winchester that have independent trucking companies that come to deliver their product. And so they can, it's up to the company, they can do the inspection and certify the truck is free, or else they can require, or the law would require, really, that the independent trucker get the permit and do their inspections. And that's usually what we try to tell the companies, that the truckers really need to get their own permit. And the trucking industry has actually been pretty cooperative. They have a CDL, electronic CDL thing available that has the spotted lanternfly inspection line on it. So truckers can download that and use it along with every CDL inspection they do. They can just check that they did the SLF one.
You mentioned stoves.
Yeah, so we had a lot of that. It was really tricky because there was gravel, stone, different size, different types of mulch. And we just had to actually go to the places and visit with them to figure out what how the business ran, kind of not in depth, but just where's it coming from, how long is it sitting on the ground, where's it going? Because a lot of times with stone, it might be just staying local if they're getting it from a big supplier. So we do ask that the stone be inspected. It's really hard because they're in a wire cage and it's very difficult to do. So it's hard. It's not, well, in some cases it's really easy, in some cases it's not.
What about like dump truck stone that like is?
So the dump truck would definitely be regulated, but the stone, if it could house like if it was again, we probably have to talk to them. If it was sitting outside and a bunch of eggs were laid on it, then, oh boy, I don't know what we would do. We'd have to talk, but my guess is just moving the stone around would probably crush, other than the egg mass, it would probably crush a live insect. So it's always something our staff is always talking to businesses, trying to figure out where their risk is and where they really need to focus and where they don't. Because pallets are tough. I mean, we have apple industry and grape industries in Winchester and around the Clark and Warren County areas, and they have pallets that sit outside and they have to inspect the pallets. There's just no choice.
And on like the swarm that you were showing the pictures of, if you got, I mean, does standard bee spray or anything do anything to them, or how do
Yeah,
you destroy
yeah,
them?
they're pretty wimpy, believe it or not. So you can use bee and hornet spray is good, but if you have a tree trunk like that, you really need a backpack sprayer where you can kind of, if you're using a compact insecticide. If you're using a systemic insecticide, the way that that's applied, at least Transect, the dinoteflon product that we use, it can go in two different ways. So you spray from the ground up to about 4 feet, and it can penetrate the bark, and then it moves throughout the tree. So no matter where the insect is feeding, it'll get a dose that will kill it. The other way that you can do it is inject it, and it takes a professional probably with a kit and all that stuff. Or if a city or county bought the kit, their staff could do it. It's not difficult to do, you just need to have the little gizmo that injects.
So the permit's $6,
The permit, it costs $6 to take the training.
and that includes your permit, what you know with the trainer, is that correct?
So you finish, the $6 is for the training. Virginia Tech had to recoup their cost for hosting the training.
Right.
And then we just do the permit for free. Yeah. And
Okay.
treatment right now, if we can get to you, because we have 7 spinal lanternfly positions, and we have 1 filled.
Wow.
Because it's just, we pay so bad.
Imagine that.
So you were talking about the trucking industry.
Yeah.
So you have a truck that comes out of Texas to Wythe County or even Pennsylvania. Do they have to have a permit to leave to go back to Texas?
They should, yeah. There's a lot of situational things like that. Are they coming into Wythe County, dropping off the load, turning around and going? Or are they spending the night? If they're spending the night, they have a chance. If they're spending more than, dropping off their load and going back out, that's the way our law actually reads. If you're just coming in, dropping the load off and going, or if you're stopping for fuel when you're going, you don't. But if you're coming and spending the night or spending a while, you need to get one.
So what's the regulation process for that?
So,
That's-
when we had staff, we were actually checking in with businesses and determining, have you heard of this? You need to comply. We've been advertising this all over the place. Who's your customer base? Are you moving anything outside of the quarantine or not? Because if the product that's selling is just staying local, then, you know, there's not, we request that they remove spot and lanternfly, so you're not spreading it locally. But we can't, there's, if it's everywhere in the county, it doesn't matter. You know, like Winchester, down here it would matter, because
Well, and I mean,
it's
I'm
not
just,
everywhere.
and I'm thinking, you know, probably 95% of the businesses is shipping out of that region. I mean, even up into Pennsylvania, they're shipping everywhere. So that's a big issue.
A lot of the national trucking companies have already permitted their truck drivers.
You were talking about the exit 77 truck stop and the tree of heaven, or the amount of the tree of heaven they have up there. Is that something that y'all approach that business and say, hey, you might want to think about cutting this down? I mean, how does that?
It's
be
part of the
something
best
work?
management practices that are required if you're, have a permit. So if we do a regulatory check, we certainly add that in. But with one staff person,
Yeah.
we're not getting very far. That would be the, part of the job duties of the other 6 people that we hired. But yes, we would say, you know, hey, and in Winchester, we got a lot of compliance for that. It was pretty astounding to me how many people took out the tree of heaven.
And I mean, on the county side, we're in the same boat as far as, you know, having a small staff. We didn't invite Matthew Miller, our extension agent, and he doesn't have a huge staff either. But Matthew, is there anything you want to add, or anything that your office is doing?
You know, what I guess, Brian, what I would add is, we do pesticide training annually. We'll do that this fall. So if you're a homeowner, farmer, and you want to maintain a restricted license, we're going to incorporate this into our fall curriculum. I go to Hotel Roanoke in 2 weeks for our annual meeting to be recertified so that I can teach people about using pesticides. I think the challenge, as I've listened to this, obviously is the regulatory side. So, you know, I'm sitting here listening to it, and I think people will be very receptive to being aware. As I read through, I went back and read through some of the language of the regulation today, and Jamie, your question is very pertinent. If you fuel up in Wythe County, you don't need a permit, like for traveling through. If you pull off at any of the truck stops and you spend the night, technically, per the language of the law, you would need a permit. If you pull into Gatorade, I think, and load and leave, you don't. If you pull into Gatorade and, you know, you sit there any length of time and you're changing pallets and that type of thing, you probably need one. Honestly, there's a lot of people, from an industry standpoint, we still have obviously commercial orchards here. I think about the Christmas trees moving out of this county, which is substantial. My gut feeling is the larger operators have already taken care of this because they have so much interstate movement. Some of those smaller producers choose and cut, some of the smaller orchards, and obviously we've got a vineyard industry here and some of the really close adjacent people on some county lines. So it's going to factor into some of what they do. I have gotten 0 calls at our office, nor have we had anybody call and think that they found one. And it's nice to know that we've got a small isolated population right now. I would hope that we could control that. I'm kind of grinning because I think that I want to control. Yeah.
And I wonder, you know, in the last several years, we've seen an influx of commercial farm operations.
Correct.
And that, I mean, I wonder about, you know, how that's gonna affect the influx of, because I notice Carroll County is on the list, and
I think, interestingly enough, I mean, the Lanternfly obviously has economic impact. We have another invasive tick in Virginia and now in Wythe County that's causing dramatic impact. And so, to your point, anytime you have that much interstate movement, we're going to have more and more of it. So, I mean, you guys fund the invasive weed program, weed control program, and it's not, obviously it's not an insect, but the number of weird
And then the other concern is too, for us, is we're fixing to generate more rail service into the area with a new business that's coming, so those cars is gonna set, then they're gonna leave, you don't know where they've been setting, possibly in the Winchester area, Pennsylvania area. So that's gonna just add to it, so.
Good point.
As a matter of fact, we probably need to start looking at rail lines here in Wythe, because again, we do have 15 inspectors, plant protection inspectors across the state, and they have tons and tons of other work, but they do help out with surveying for Spot and Lanternfly, and I can see if I can ask them to look, because quite frankly, it is astounding how fast Prince William County, it's spread in Prince William County because of the rail line.
And I agree with Matthew. I would hope that as with countyans, we could control the small, if it's a small pocket, as she's saying, we can take care of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are real receptive. It's really not anything new for farmers to scout, and on the farmer side, it's gonna be a pretty quick acceptance. To the point, now we're looking at a much broader industry scope, you know, if it's leaving here in a truck, everything we got leaves here in a truck.
Yeah.
So, and pretty much every night, you go down there and count the number of trucks we got, so it's a big deal. And the challenge, obviously, it's been pointed out, is gonna be the enforcement side of it too. I mean, there's just not enough people.
So this is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Matthew.
No, it's just gonna be so hard to enforce it.
So this has been identified at exit 77, not 80, correct?
At 81 and 77 and Fort Chiswell, yeah, that's
Okay.
where the positive is.
So it's at exit 80.
I was thinking it was 77, it's 77 and 81, but there's two major exits, exit 77 and exit 80.
It's the Flying J.
Yeah.
There's two flags.
There's one of them at every exit.
For some reason, I was thinking 77, but I may be wrong on it.
I thought, for some reason, I thought it was the one at exit 77.
I'm trying to think where, so to her point, I'm trying to think where the highest density of tree pavement is. And
I'm
what's
thinking of
unusual
Vdot right
about
away.
that, it's not as much on at the 77s, I think it's more down towards 80 going towards the old, on that side that goes towards the old outlet.
Yeah.
But I don't know where they're at.
You know what, that might be 52. I'm sorry. That might be Route 52.
So that's
That would be exit 80.
That would be,
And
because they have a
81.
denser population of that particular tree on that side.
Right,
Yeah.
yes,
If
Carroll
you-
County is 77.
If you could find out, just to let us know, because one, I would like to check if it's along, there's a very wide right-of-way right there. So if it's VDOT right-of-way and it's a tree of heaven issue on VDOT right-of-way and right next to the truck stops, then maybe we can at least get VDOT to see what they can do to try to look at it in that area, as
So
well.
we actually have a super cooperative relationship with Vdot, and they have given us the okay to treat on all their right-of-ways, and we've been to Wythe probably, I'm thinking 3 times this summer, treating with that contact insecticide with our VDACS contractor. And
The initial notification from last December said exit 77.
oh, thank you. I can send you the actual map. It's not very many trees, and it's not very widespread. So that's how come we've been targeting it, because we can make a difference
Can I
there.
ask a question?
Yeah.
So when you target it, in the event that the county eradicated that population, if we were that fortunate, how quickly does the quarantine go away? Or how long does the quarantine stay in place?
I don't know, that would depend upon what else we find. We would probably have to survey. And I'm not too sure that eradication has ever been possible. I know, right? But it could be, it could happen, because it's so small.
Right.
Sounds like a challenge, Matthew.
I mean,
And we would be willing to work with you, because exit 77, what is not VDOT surrounding it, is county-owned surrounding it. So
Yes.
we would be more than willing to allow any type of treatments or whatever on the rest of that.
I actually, I have to look again, but I think we have an
Good.
agreement with the county already. Yeah.
Good.
I have to look to make sure, but if we don't, then I'll contact you, because that is something that really helps us out, just having maybe not a blanket agreement, but at least, a large chunk of the county property that surrounds the positive helps us.
And we have a mile or so of railroad track, that's county-owned railroad track in our industrial park. And we certainly would not have any issue with, you know, if somebody wanted to come through, and there's not typically rail cars sitting on it, but if they wanted to walk it and check the trees and all that around the area and see.
Sounds like a great idea.
We would be,
Yeah,
no
that-
issue with that.
It'd
Yeah.
probably be in our best interest to move as quick as we can,
Yep.
just due to the commercial farming that's going right there next to that exit.
I would love to, I'll email you later about the location and a good date for us to go.
So national forest wise, this is not something that's been really infecting our national forest areas yet, or is it,
You know, it's funny you should ask that. So we haven't really found it in densely wooded areas. We've basically found it along railroads and highways. But we just got a report on the Appalachian Trail, 4 miles away from anything. So, not quite sure.
And I'm guessing, Stephen, it's because they don't move really a broad area, right? They're fairly concentrated, so unless you're moving the eggs, you're not gonna move. So there's like not a huge migration pattern.
I don't know, I have, you know, that's part of what researchers need to try to figure out. But I have heard stories, and I don't know that they've ever, although it was a researcher that told me this, they were in Pennsylvania, between, on the mountains near Pittsburgh. And they were looking up going, what the heck is that insect? And it was this swirl of spotted lanternfly. So it is possible, I mean, they don't fly, they're not a very effective flyer, they're more like a hopper, glider kind of thing. And it is possible they could have caught a thermal, and the thermals run up and down the mountain ridges, they could move quite a distance
Right.
if they were up as high as she was telling me.
But you guys would appreciate this. Last fall, when tropical storms came out of the Gulf, we had insects show up here that had no business here. And I had people tell me that they flew in from Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and I thought, that's absolutely crazy. And it was absolutely correct. So they were, Stony Fork, Blackleg, heavy concentrations came with the tropical storm. So who knows? Who knows if it's enough to blow them, move them, whatever.
Do you know, New Jersey, right next to Philadelphia, and Berks County, Pennsylvania, where the initial infestation occurred, they didn't find any spotted lanternfly until, like, it was 2014 when Pennsylvania got it. They didn't find it until 2019, and then by 2020, 8 of their 13 counties had spotted lanternfly. So I'm thinking that they had, you know, we had that huge, I can't remember which tropical storm it was now, but I think it just slammed a bunch of spotted lanternfly into New Jersey. It was crazy. It was like nothing and then everywhere in 1 year.
And I know it was on the news this morning. I saw it, or I at least saw that it was coming up on the news. I didn't actually get a chance to watch it, but, and you know, I know the POI, did I say that right? PIO, has put a little bit out on Facebook, but I guess the more people we can reach, the more people to keep their eyes open would be a really good first step. So I don't know if there's something extra we can do, because I'm guarantee you, you know, 90% of the county might not be aware of it. You know, general public probably wouldn't be, so.
We did just do, because of the quarantine spread, we've been actively touching as many commodity stakeholder groups that we could possibly get to. So like the Trekking Association, the Winery Association, the Vineyard Association, the Forestry, Virginia Forestry Association, the, I don't know, there's like 13 of them, the Nursery Association, the American Nursery Association, everybody that we could think of. And we sent out emails and email blasts and letters and everything. The other thing that we just did was it's gonna be 3 weeks, or 3 months rather. The first Facebook blast was done this past week, and it was to, it targeted the new quarantine counties. And it got, I don't know, I'd have to look up exactly what Wythe's
yeah, what to look for, you know.
I would say, Stephen, if the board has contacts with like industry, Jamie, if there's, contacts, whether that's like a JIDA or not really through the chamber, but a good way to reach out to all the shippers. I've got great resources to mail to farmers. I don't have the address of folks in the industrial park and industry, but if we could do that, if it's something that interests you guys, we could have the same specialist that would come, if I asked to do a training for farmers, we could get him to come do a training for industry and kind of gear them up to get the certification and get that done.
I think it would be a good thing, Matthew, especially with all the industry that's in Wythe County
Oh, yeah.
that's shipping their commodities out. I mean, there's some big-time industries here, but then there's some smaller industries that's shipping out as well, so we're gonna have to touch everyone, just to make sure that they are educated.
Yeah, and there's as much, honestly, we've got it here, but I think there's a lot more risk that we bring more in than we technically should. I mean, obviously, if it came in here, it makes sense that it's at a truck stop. With, as well as I do, the movement, both rail, but that 81 corridor out of Pennsylvania to this
Yeah.
area, I mean, the odds are we're bringing more in every day than we're ever gonna ship out.
Yeah, anybody that doesn't think there's a lot of trucks here, just go to the 5 or 6 truck stops that's in Wythe County. Probably about right now, they'll be packed.
I would like to say that Extension has been with us from day one on this. And Eric Day, the Extension entomologist, has just been, gosh, I just can't even begin to tell you. But one of that management guide that's handed out tonight was a publication that he put together along with some other specialists. And we depend on that every day in every way because it's so concise and so easy to follow. So Extension's really just been,
I think you guys had it, I sent that PDF file, Stephen. I've got some more, I'll leave out here on the table, because I think you put some flyers out here as well. I'll leave those on the table. And if we can, if you guys want to do some, you got resources to put together some industry contacts, we'll bring Eric in and do a training with him.
and myself and my boss and our one spot Lanternfly employee would be happy to be a part of that if needed, although Eric doesn't need any help. He's great.
All right, does anybody have any more questions for Ms. McIntyre or Mr. Miller? Stephen, I guess, I don't know if you wanna talk to Mr. Mann and see the best way to,
I will, and we have a member of the JIDA board back here with us, behind Mr. Miller, so I'll have him help work with me to get that information to him, and, might even look at scheduling information, and then we'll also look at like some of these, workforce training groups that get together, or something, just, I think it's good for any of the industries in the area to be aware of it.
And the other thing I would add, Gene obviously comes to the Farm Bureau Board, and I would say the more you can keep emphasis on statewide support, dollar-wise, that would be good. So obviously VDAX would appreciate some more support, so probably the next Farm Bureau Board meeting, Gene, it would be appropriate for them to do a resolution too, identifying the crisis or the risk and asking for some more sponsorship money to train and educate people.
well, thank y'all.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, thank you
I
very much.
appreciate you.
Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew.
All right, next item on new business is the Blue Star MOU and Infrastructure Improvement Agreement. Mr. Barrett?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would request your all's approval. The first item is an MOU, and we are not really a party to it, but we do have to sign off on it, indicating our acceptance of 2 sections of the MOU. And I would recommend that you all approve staff to sign the MOU and the infrastructure improvement grant. And basically, that infrastructure improvement grant is the $8.5 million that is coming from the state to assist us with putting in infrastructure for the Blue Star project.
All right, entertain a motion to authorize staff to execute the Blue Star MOU and Infrastructure Improvement Agreement.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry, a second by Mr. Cook. Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
So approved. Next, we have the Blue Star Estoppel Certificate. Did I say that correctly? Couldn't get the pastor's name right, did I?
What you have in front of you, I presented to the Economic Development Committee, but I requested that they not take action, requested some clarification of item number 4. I'll let Mr. Farthing comment. I've given you all a handout in front of you with some revised edits that he has proposed to paragraph number 4. And I'll let you say in general what this whole thing's about.
Yeah,
You're
so,
on.
so generally, an estoppel agreement is for the companies to attract investors, and they just want to make sure that all is good with the lease or with whatever requirements the company needs to make, saying they're in good standing with the landlord or with covenants or whatever's going on. And so that's what this is, for some future maybe investment in Blue Star, possibly, that's my speculation. The issue we have right now is paragraph number 4. I did send an email through the JIDA attorney today, who's kind of coordinating this agreement. And paragraph number 4 says they're in compliance with the covenants of the park. You all approved a site plan in December that was at least a partial site plan. I don't think it was a full site plan. And they were supposed to come back as they develop the project and bring us additional information to approve, and that has not happened. So my rub with the paragraph is it implies that we've approved everything, and I don't think that's happened. So I'm trying to tweak that language to show we approved everything on December 28th as it was presented. Thank you. And we're waiting to hear back from Blue Star. So what I would request is that, so they don't have to wait on us for another 2 weeks, is if you would approve signature of that document upon approval of the county attorney and or the county administrator. And once that language is satisfactory to us, we can say, yeah, let's sign it.
They're talking about the right of first refusal.
Do what, sir?
Oh, yeah, in that agreement, there's also a right of first refusal, which the draft before you, that language is okay, in my opinion, Mr. Baird's opinion. The purpose of that right of first refusal is the covenants say if anyone sells a lot in the park, the county gets the right to buy it. And because we gave the land to the JIDA, they're wanting the county to waive our right to buy that land back from the JIDA. So it's in the JIDA's name right now. And what they're saying is, we don't want to buy it from the JIDA, but once Blue Star owns it, if Blue Star ever goes to sell it, they have to offer it to us first. So-
Doesn't take our right, but they're just wanting it to clearly state that we're not using that right of refusal on the JIDA.
Right.
I had to read through it 2 or 3 times to finally understand that, but yeah, that's what he's doing.
How many lawyers involved in this?
Probably at least
3 or
4.
4.
I was getting ready to say it's more than 2. Once they get to
We got at
that
least 3 on
point-
our side, because you got Mr. Cohen, somebody in his firm, and me. I've not had Don look at it yet, but then Blue Star's probably got at least 2 or 3 guys on, or ladies.
But I would request a motion for approval upon satisfaction of the county administrator and county attorney.
All right, I'll entertain that motion.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry to have a second.
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Cook. Is there any questions or discussion on that? All right, here and now we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye. Aye.
So approved. Anything else for new business, Mr. Baird?
No, sir.
All right, move on to board reports. We have the Economic Development Committee.
Economic Development Committee met on August 4th. The Economic Development meeting makes the following recommendation: granting APCO right-of-way easement for Lot 24 pump station.
All right, coming from committee, it doesn't need a second. Is there any questions or discussion on that recommendation? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote with Mr. Terry.
Aye. Aye.
I'll abstain.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
So approved.
Second one is adopted resolution 2022-21 for the Vdot land use permit Progress Park Forest Main project.
Again, coming from the committee, it doesn't need a second. Is there any questions or discussion on that recommendation? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Aye.
So approved.
And last, endorsing JIDA site development grant application for Lot 1 and characterization grant application for Lot 10.
Is there any questions or discussion on that recommendation? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote with Mr. Terry.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So approved. Anything else from the Economic Development Committee?
No, sir.
All right, moving on to the Budget Committee.
The Budget Committee met on August 4th, 2022, and recommends the following: accepting the cooperative procurement pricing and to authorize the county administrator or his designee to enter into all necessary arrangements to implement the Next Gen 911.
All right, come from committee, it doesn't need a second. Mr. Hankins, do you want to add anything to that?
I can talk about it, or you can ask me questions if anybody has any questions about the Next Gen 911. The short of it is, it's a federal and state requirement that we move our 911 center to that. The state is providing some funding, both for the call handling equipment upgrade and for the network services through AT&T. This can all be done through cooperative procurement. The state has recommended the method for us to do that and provided some funding, which is unusual with the mandates that we usually get from the state. So staff recommendation is that you allow us to proceed to make the upgrades.
All right, does anybody have any questions or discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
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 So approved.
Amending and appropriating $18,736 from the county reserves to account 3506-457703, the PSA grant, to cover the difference in the state grant fundings and total cost for implementing the emergency medical dispatch with power phone.
Does anybody have any questions or discussion on that recommendation? All right, do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So approved.
Approving change order number 1 for the county office building project. The change order adds an additional cost of $62,904.16 and adds 41 days to the timing for the following: removing of the former building masonry foundation, concrete footer portion generally located east and west of the current DSS building, south corners, removal of the former building concrete footing, partially embedded within the current DSS or DDS building, south concrete basement wall, rock excavation encountered during the excavation for the building basement necessary to read underside of the floor slab and stone base.
Mr. Barrett, do you have anything to add to that surprise?
No, sir. Just a lot of rock to move, and Ms. Collins and I will be glad when the rock hammer is gone.
And in case you didn't catch that, they found a wall,
Old foundation.
an old foundation wall, no digging. Surprise, surprise. All right, any questions or discussion on that one? All right, do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
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 So approved.
Committing to provide an additional $2.7 million dollars needed for the Scott Memorial School project contingent upon the school board transferring the surplus Withers Park property to the Board of Supervisors within 90 days. This transfer will be with the understanding that Withers Park property will still be eligible for the use by the Spiller students as long as Spiller is being used as a school.
Mr. Baird, do you have anything to add on that?
No, sir, unless there are any questions.
Would you mind to summarize that just a little bit for the ones that don't know?
Yeah, well, first of all, as you're aware, on the school construction project, Dr. Poole came in and made a presentation that they are in need of about $2.7 million to finish that project, and has requested that the county provide those funds. There are a couple options out there. One is potentially literary loan funds for us. Other is us just to go out and borrow the money directly. But they need that commitment from us to go ahead and do so. The recommendation is for us to go ahead and commit to providing that $2.7 million. Not borrowing immediately. We've got a little bit of time to worry about. We can see what we can get from the literary loan in the process. The recommendation on the property is Withers Park over here is actually owned by the school board. It is leased to the town of Wytheville, has been since the lease I'm aware of starting was 1991. It was an original lease that ran through 2031. We have since become aware that an extension of that lease was granted in 2018, and it is now showing as being leased through 2058, that Wytheville has the lease on that property. And the committee's recommendation is for the school board to transfer that property to the county.
Thank you.
And another big piece on that, Mr. Baird, and I know we've discussed it, but, of course, the project come in higher than what we anticipated based on the rates or you know.
Current bidding and
Yeah,
buying.
but this project also has how much attached that the school board is providing?
Oh, well, we provided $12 million of funding, and they have in the neighborhood of $12 million, $13 million of funding between their ESSER 2, ESSER 3.
That has a
that are
timeline
carried
on
over,
it.
And it has a timeline of being constructed, yes.
All right, does anybody else have any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 So approved.
Amending and appropriating the following amounts for compensation board salary increases. You want me to read them all, Mr. Mayor?
No, sir.
For the circuit, or the clerk of court, it's.
I
1, 2,
just say
3,
clerk of
4,
court and the sheriff as shown.
And then sheriff as shown.
Mr. Baird, you want to explain that one?
Yeah, basically, if you all will recall, we budgeted what our best estimates was for constitutional officers, and that was a 5% increase. The clerk of circuit court received a 5% increase, plus they also received a $1,250 per employee additional amount as well that we did not have in the original budget. So we have to amend their budget. On the sheriff's office, our increases did not include the compression increases. That we didn't know what the compression was going to be. So this number, our staff has spent a tremendous amount of time going through and making certain that this gets all of the figures in place of what we need for those throughout for the remainder of this year, and also making them retroactive to July 1st.
Right, is there any questions or discussion on that one? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Abstain.
I'll abstain.
Aye.
So approved.
Amend and appropriating $77,337 to account 5301-450150 for additional state revenues received from the CSA administration in the fiscal year 2022.
Is there any questions or discussion on that recommendation? Additional state revenues always good. Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Uh,
Aye.
Aye.
So approved.
Amending and appropriating $6,585 to account 5301-450120 and $972 to account 5301-450140, a total of $6,858 for additional state revenue received for the VJCCCA.
All right, is there any questions or discussion on that?
Can you refresh my memory what those initials stand for?
Virginia Juvenile Criminal,
It's basically the juvenile probation, community service
Okay.
organization. So,
I didn't recognize it.
yeah. All right, any more questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
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 So approved. Any other additional anything else from the budget committee?
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Y'all are
you
busy.
you mentioned that, and I will express, Miss Williams is here with us like she always is. She is working to try to come up with these things throughout the year. We discovered after the fact last year that DSS received more state revenue than what they had budgeted to come in state revenue. And by not amending and appropriating that additional state revenue into the budget, it actually meant they overspent what was in the budget we approved. So she is trying to watch for any additional state revenues coming in to amend them in to keep us from having any comments about exceeding the budget expenditures.
$1.6 billion surplus. Get every penny you can.
Yes.
All right, move on to Board of Supervisors time. Mr. Cook?
I have nothing this time, sir.
All right, Mr. Burnett?
I have a couple of things. Last 2 weekends, I've been called into the recycling center at Burn Springs. I don't know what's going on with the trash compactor. They can't tell me. I know it works and don't work. But they have a concrete pad there for another open top. I don't know if that's possible or not. But that led me back over to Austinville, and they're all having problems with out-of-county personnel showing up. And they love to take tag numbers and tell me all about it, but, you know, I know that's been discussed before, and so we'll probably end up still being talking about it.
You say personnel, you're meaning out-of-county citizens
Yes.
coming in and dropping off their trash?
Right. And so, but, there's that, and then, if we could have a discussion sometime, maybe on the next agenda, on the exemption for property tax and elderly, that you sent the email out on, I'd appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I think we need to add that to the agenda or something, just have a discussion. I know Mr. Bear sent out the numbers and.
If you all would like, and I think you're probably interested in changing it, and I'd like to get rid of 6 or 7 different amendments to it. I would recommend going ahead and authorizing the county attorney to begin drafting a new elderly and tax handicap ordinance, and he can leave the amounts blank, and we can fill them in if you all will go ahead and direct to do so. I think that would be best to do.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me. I'll make that motion.
I'll second that one.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So approved. Anything else, Mr. Burnett?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Mr. Bear, on the Barron Springs compactor, did we replace that one, or is it on the list to be replaced, or?
I was trying to remember, we just
did the concrete work out there last summer,
yeah.
but I don't remember if we replaced the compactor.
We replaced one, though, didn't we?
Yeah,
One
we
was down.
replaced one.
Replaced one, yeah, and we've got, I just approved the purchase order for 2 of them, but I believe that's Pump Hollow. I'll follow up and see what's going on with that compactor.
I couldn't remember. That's the
Yeah,
reason I was-
when you was talking, I was trying to remember, I just approved the purchase order last week or earlier this week.
And they couldn't tell me, and it looked like it was working in the middle of the week, so I was more concerned about just putting another open
Open
top.
top.
You know, 'cause I didn't take no pictures, but Sunday it was overflowing into the parking lot. I was like, because I actually went to Austinville to take my trash off.
We'll follow up with you on that.
I appreciate it.
All right, Ms. Lawson,
And nothing at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple things. I got a lot, but it'll go pretty quick. So the invoice that we were talking about, we've got that taken care of, right? For Jason's Auto?
We followed back up. to be- yeah.
Okay,
We've asked them to provide an original invoice. Once we have an original invoice, we can get it
okay.
processed and
I'll
paid.
follow back up with him as well. Progress Park hunting,
Yes.
where we look at for this year. A lot of interest, especially for the people that didn't get to hunt last year, like me.
I will check with Mr. Williams, but I understood that he was proceeding with it. We just took out a couple of the sites in the process. We talked about an additional site, but I don't think the lessee was interested in that additional site. So I think it may only be 3 sites this year to maximum, maybe 2.
Okay, yeah,
But
and
we're still
there's a
in-
lot of interest and of course a lot of concerns. They seeing all the construction going on, so they're thinking we won't get to hunt.
Yeah.
And I told them I'd bring it up, so I'll pass that on, so thank y'all. Thank
Well-
Kevin for his work as well.
We've had some just walk in and ask us, you know, who they need to contact. And I've been sending them to Kevin, and I think he's been sending them to DWR.
Okay. Jones Road, Mr. Barr, I seen your email. What do we really need to do on that? Wait for the next application process?
I've got it on a note, I've requested a meeting with Andy to talk about several projects. And my note literally says, you know, smart scale, question mark, question mark, question mark.
Okay.
I hate to have to go that route for a short road project, but I think he's going to tell me that is the only viable route, which means 2 years until the next application and 6 years until, it probably would be constructed. So,
Okay.
in your 3rd term, maybe that road would be finished. But, I've got it on there and I'll let you know what he says. Based on his email, I don't see any other option.
Well, let's get through the first term and think about the second. Okay, so I'll pass that on. He sent us an email while we've been here.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to read it. So, on that, yeah, any luck with, talking to Mr. Fowler about moving the speed limit on Fort Chisholm Road back past,
No, and that's part of the things that I've got on the agenda to meet with him and
Okay.
discuss, so see what we can do on that. I think we have a stronger chance on that one than the 94. I think he'll reference all the speed studies and everything previously on 94, but, that one may have an opportunity to move that one down.
okay. Guardrail on Gator Lane, is this on that
Same
same note?
thing,
Okay. Mr. Hankins, any updates on lead mines construction?
Yes, the drop ceiling has been put in. The rooms all have air conditioning now. The office is air conditioned. So from a comfort standpoint, at least that part is done. They are proceeding to working on the back part. I haven't been down there for about a week, so I'm not sure how much progress they've made. But at least they got the bunk rooms substantially completed. They did put in the cabinetry and the appliances. It's a tight fit. We probably should have measured that again, but everything will work.
All right, thanks, sir. Mr. Chairman, last thing I got, I know we kind of talked about it a little bit before the meeting, but I did meet with the Max Meadows Fire Department to go over the MOA that we had discussed. They did have some concerns, and it was not only just the officers, there was other members there as well. It's really, I think it's something that we can work with. So the meeting went very well. And then I've got some other notes that we wrote down from that meeting. One of them is actually who owns this. This is not, doesn't have anything to do with Max Meadows Fire Department, but who owns the community fields in Max Meadows, which is the county, correct?
Norfolk Southern owns, those fields. We
Okay.
lease those fields.
All right, so I told them wrong. I told them we own it.
Yeah.
So I'll go back in and undo that one. But the overall meeting went well. Of course, like all the fire departments, they like air conditioning, and I know we had talked about that in the past, but I would prefer to talk about how the conversation went with that group, with the Fire and Rescue Committee, and then we can discuss it and bring it back to the full board. That
And
way we
it
won't
might
take
be
up a lot of
something
time.
where we need to, after the Fire and Rescue Committee meeting, have the chief or maybe a couple officers from there,
And I
Mr.
can
Hankins,
arrange-
myself, and you sit down and pick through those final details.
Just go ahead and.
Yep.
Yep, and I mean, I think it's, a lot of the points they brought up was good points. I think we can work through them. And just like I told them, I was like, hey, it's gonna be give and take. There's gonna be things that you're asking that we may not agree to, and then things that we're asking that you may not agree to, but we gotta make it happen for the citizens, so do the right thing. But that's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Horny?
I have a couple road concerns. Do you want them, or you want me to just tell you afterwards?
Go ahead and give them to me.
Meeting with
That'd be
Vdot.
fine.
Actually, two of them I sent an email to Andy, but I've never gotten any response, so I don't know if he's getting my emails, not getting them, what's going on. The first one was, it's where Cripple Creek Road turns right, and Slate Spring Branch Road starts down that little dip.
Mhm.
They were asking for watch for turning vehicle signs, I guess put up on the hill above there. And the second one was spraying, the vines along Francis Mill Road between the branch and the road. I don't know if that's actually in VDOT's right of way, or if it's something that the landowner personally needs to take care of. So I need information from him on that. And the other one was, where are we at on the speed limit on Pope Road?
All you can do.
I know they were supposed to do some speed studies or do something, traffic counts or something, and I don't know if they've ever done it or if they,
I'll follow up
What
with
they
him
do.
on that and see where they are.
I believe that's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horny. Mr. Terry?
Yes, sir, just a couple thank yous, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, thank you for helping us with that, building inspector issue. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Cook and Chairman Ball, for filling in for me on Thursday when our committee meetings got changed. I really appreciate that very much. And that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. I just have a couple of things, just to follow up with the discussion we had about Ager Park. Have we made any headway with some repairs out there, or?
Kevin has been working on some, and he had actually been working on some before the issue was brought up at the last meeting, so he'd already taken care of some of those referenced repairs. I've asked him to look at the swinging bridge. I don't know if he's made that repair or not. And we had someone volunteer to come out and do some work there as well, and I believe the work was satisfactory. So that has helped with some of the ongoing issues. I've not been out this week to check on it, but I'll ride out and take a look.
And when's that, the Wythe Bland Foundation?
Grant application went in last week. It was due August 1st.
And when do they usually announce that?
Late October, usually.
And, last thing I had, last week when I was, quarantined at the house, Chief Deputy Klein, they had a Pack the Bus event at Walmart, and you wanna talk about how much stuff you got to distribute to the schools?
I can still see stuff even when I close my eyes.
But they, if you didn't see what people donated for the kids, when they go back to school next week, it was really impressive. Also, last week when I was stuck quarantined at the house, I've had several comments about the employee picnic. Mr. Baird, thank you, or pass along our thanks to everybody on the picnic committee that had a hand in that.
No thanks goes to me. I appreciate it. I will pass it along.
Had a lot of good comments. I'm starting to take it personal since I wasn't there. I thought, maybe it's.
There was clapping involved.
Yeah, and if I could, Mr. Chairman, to chime back in, my apologies for not making it, but I did hear that you let everybody know that I was caught up at work with a long week, a very long week. So,
Well, we appreciate your all support, and we appreciate doing the event, and we want to continue to try to find some different activities and different things to do. It used to be real easy to have more door prizes and stuff like that. However, these conflict of interest rules and all that make it more difficult to go out and get a lot of those things out there. But the staff, they did a scavenger hunt and some different things. They tried having a piñata for kids. Did not work out as well as hoped, but they tried to do some different things. So we welcome any input onto it, and we appreciate y'all's continued support.
And
Staff appreciates it.
I'll just throw this out there, and I don't want to start an argument between me and Jamie, but this is the second year in a row it's been held on Eastern End County. We have a real nice facility on the western end that also has a swimming pool that I'm sure that county employees would enjoy as hot as it's been, so
Just look at the globe.
it's my time.
Well, just so you know, Mr. Hankins has suggested that next year that the Board of Supervisors parachute into the picnic.
And I wasn't gonna say anything.
I send my request, but I won't be there next year.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but you goaded me into it. I just want everybody to know in the Speedwell district that their supervisor jumped out of a plane, which was not on fire, was not crashing, and he
Right.
paid to do it.
Exactly. Perfectly good flying plane.
All right.
Nobody
Mr.
ever
Chair,
said I was real bright.
Mr. Chairman, you might want to congratulate the clerk of the circuit court and Sergeant Dixon for their win in the cornhole tournament at the picnic.
Yes, he had the trophy at work this morning.
And you might not want to ask Mr. Bear how he did.
It wasn't his sport. It was some of the ice
After playing golf with you and Mr. Barry, I think we'll just leave our sporting prowess alone. So, all right, next item on the agenda, we do have a closed session for 2.2-3711A3, acquisition or disposition of real property for the Apex lease. And I would add, and I think this will cover mine and Mr. Terry's, 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel. So I'll entertain a motion to. Oh,
Let me add to A8, concentration with legal counsel regarding solar projects.
okay. Mine is with a lease question, and I think Mr. Terry's is with a personnel issue.
It's probably A8, consultation with legal counsel. So 7 is probably litigation, 8 is just consultation with legal counsel.
Okay, so A8, I'll strike A7 from my recommendation for a motion. So have a motion to go into closed session under 2.2-3711A3 and 2.2-3711A8.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Ms. Lawson. Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're now in closed session. Entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Byrne, second by Mr. Terry.
Yes, sir.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're now back in open session. Mr. Terry, will you read the certification?
Yes, sir. Whereas the Wythe County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors, the such meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wythe County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification resolution applies. And only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convened in the closed meeting were heard, discussed, and or considered by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors. And Mr. Chairman, I'll make that a motion.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry, a second by Mr. Smith. Is there any questions or discussion on the certification? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
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 So approved. Right, I'll entertain a motion to set a public hearing for our, which meeting, Mr. Barry?
September 13th.
Our September 13th meeting to consider a revenue sharing agreement for solar facilities.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Cook. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Ms. Lawson. Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? So approved. Anything else to come before the board, Mr. Barrett?
No, sir.
Mr. Hankins, you have anything? Mr. Farthing, you have anything else? Ms. Collins, you have anything? Does anybody else have anything to come before the board? Hearing none, we'll be adjourned.